Zambian vote. I'm your host. My name is Andrew Mwanza. The Electoral Commission of Zambia has extended the nationwide voter registration exercise an additional 15 days, now running until November 26th, 2025. Now, the extension follows a detailed review of field reports that revealed a large number of eligible citizens that have not yet managed to register as voters. Meanwhile, the window for the general public to submit views to the Technical Committee on amendments to the Constitution closed on November 13th, 2025. Now, the sittings held across all the 10 provinces from October 27th to November 13th gathered citizens' input on proposed constitutional changes. This morning on the Zambian vote, we discussed the extension of the voter registration by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, but also we discussed the submissions of the constitutional amendment that has come to an end. This morning, we're privileged to be joined in by Economic Front President, State Council Wynter Kabimba, Vice President of the Economic Front. President Wynter Kabimba, good morning. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us.
Good morning, Andrew, and good morning, dear viewers and listeners.
Let's begin off with your reaction to the decision by the Electoral Commission of Zambia to extend the voter registration period by 15 days.
Well, I think the decision is good. It's in the interest of democracy. You know, the more people register to vote, the more people turn out to vote on the 13th of August next year, the better in terms of reflecting the voice of the people in terms of choosing their own leadership, political leadership in the country. So I think it is a good indication that the ECZ wants to capture as many voters, as many citizens as possible.
The target by the Commission was to register 3.5 million new voters to add to the voter register. The start of the process was very shaky and very slow, as many people didn't turn out to go and register as voters. Politically, and having lived so many years in understanding how elections go, what indication does it present if we see very few number of people registering to vote?
Look, that's a civic issue. I'll tell you that from my own viewpoint, is that people are getting more and more fatigued about voting. They do not see any positive changes in their well-being, after casting the vote. And they've been doing this, for those that are old enough, they've been doing this since 1991. If you asked Andrew, somebody that voted for the MMD, under all that frenzy and euphoria of that period, and you ask them today whether or not their livelihood has significantly changed, I think 8 out of 10 will tell you no, it hasn't. So I think it's this fatigue, this disengagement from government, this sense by our people that voting doesn't turn out to benefit them. Okay? And that's the only way you can explain, the apathy, towards apart from the fact that we have very little civic education, in terms of educating our people that this is an important exercise. But I think the underlying reason would be voter fatigue.
Voter fatigue. Yeah. To what extent, would this, blame be patched on the Electoral Commission of Zambia? Because others, would complain that we've not been sensitized, adequate enough to know that there's a process that is ongoing. In fact, if you look at the numbers in the urban areas, they're not so impressive. I don't know in your area if you've heard the commission moving around with the vehicle, calling for people to register. But these are some of the calls that we receive that we've not seen, the commission passing around to make announcements that people must go on specific centers to go and register to vote. To what extent would you blame the Commission in terms of the heightened sensitization towards voter registration?
I really don't know whether or not the blame should be apportioned to ECZ. Okay, I think there are more platforms today. There are more tools that could be used to reach out to people than a Land Rover going around, Mandevo, with a megaphone and say, please come and vote. Okay? And the mobilization of people to go and register as voters is not the duty of the ECZ. I think it's the duty of political parties, civil society organizations. I think these are the groups that should go out and say, spread this civic duty in the minds of the people, sensitize the people that it's important, for you to vote. ECZ is just an agency for managing and administering an election. That's what the statute says. It doesn't include them going around door to door and say, please come and vote. So I think the political parties and civil society organizations should have taken this very, very seriously. When we met as a central committee ourselves of our party, we gave out this message to the leadership of the party at the central committee level. And we said, when you get back, please go and reach out to our members and encourage them to register as voters. Those that don't have, those that have lost their voters' cards, and those that are just attaining the voting age. So we took it upon ourselves and we considered it our duty within the party to sensitize our members.
You earlier spoke of the fact that usually when you see very few people going to register as voters, it could be interpreted as political dissatisfaction, or people are not satisfied with the governments that have come, probably because they've not delivered on their promises. Who does it speak large to most? Is it the government of the day in that particular election, or perhaps people don't even have the hope in the possibilities that are there as alternatives that they could vote in office?
It's both. It's both. For those, like I said earlier, for those that have been voting Andrew from 1991, I think they are fatigued. I think they have lost hope. For those, and these are the same ones that interact, or that interact with the upcoming voters. Okay, so they sit in homes, father and son and maybe daughter or nephew. And here's the father telling the family, I've been voting since 1991. We are still in a ramshackle of a house. We still don't have enough to eat. I don't have a job. Okay? So that message then gets to the neighbor who is in similar circumstances. Okay? So there is a loss of this civic duty to vote in order for you to expect a change in your life for the government that you are voting into office. And if you just go back to 2020, 2021, there was so much expectation that UPND was going to deliver, and deliver beyond what probably we have never seen since 1991. Okay, the hope that was vested in the UPND by the people was massive. Alas, that hope has been betrayed because of the failure of the UPND to deliver. So that is the major problem as I see it from my standpoint. Yeah.
Do you find that to be a very subjective argument, that the UPND have failed to deliver? Because the president even asked a question to those that feel he hasn't delivered in which Zambia they live in, because according to the president, he has done so well in terms of the promises that he made to the people of Zambia.
Well, I think if the people were given an opportunity, they would certainly be asking the president, which Zambia do you live in yourself? I think the question, can go either way. Because, look, I listen to the president. I watch the president, on TV, and I follow him because I'm a politician, and I'm also a citizen. So I follow his interpretation of the situation. Okay? And his interpretation is this. It is an interpretation that would be very ideal for a well-developed economy. Okay? An economy which fundamentally is gauged by indices. Index A, Index B, Index C. Okay? And we can point out some of these, Say, take an index 1. If you compare how much investment has flowed into the mining sector, the 4 years of the UPND, and compare that with the first 4 years of PF, you certainly get to appreciate that there has been more investment in the mining sector, under UPND than ever before. If you correlate that with some employment opportunities, you can argue that with this flow of investment, surely a few more people have been employed in these provinces, more than we saw under PF. If you take what they are talking about now, the appreciation of the kwacha from 28, it was almost hitting 30, and it's now at 22. You can pick that as an index of success. Okay, so this is what you see in developed countries. When they talk about markets. Okay, but for the third world economy, and this is where my argument rests, for the third world economy, those indices mean very little for the ordinary person. Okay? So, for a person like me, who is paying school fees for my child in dollars, and I have to get a kwacha to buy the dollar, surely there is some benefit to me, that I need less kwacha now to buy a dollar than I needed 4 years ago.
Yep.
Okay? But for the person in Kalingalinga, for the family in Chivoria, those indices are meaningless. Because for them, there is only one or two major indices. One, the cost of mini meal. Two, the cost of essential commodities, bath soap, cooking oil, bread. Okay? Now, if the price of bread is still standing at 20 kwacha, and it was only 18 kwacha maybe under PF, then surely their judgment of the success of the UPND would be a negative one. If they were buying mini meal under PF at 200 kwacha, and they expected it to go down to 150 like the president had promised during campaign, and they're still buying the mini meal today at 200 kwacha, forget about 300, just at 200 kwacha, their view of that index would be a negative one. So you have to interpret this economy in terms of the demands and wishes of the people.
Would you say that the current administration is living in a bubble? Because if we're going to go by what you're explaining,
yes,
then it means that they're not, that they're out of touch with reality. Because what people are speaking about today is how much they're getting on a bus, how much they're buying mini meal, how much they're paying a Yango, and all these things.
Exactly.
This is what people are talking about. Would you say that then the current administration is out of touch with reality?
That's why I said when you gave the example of the president's comment, I said, well, that comment can go up, the other way. I'm sure if you had people, they would ask the president, Mr. President, do you live in Zambia? Do you live in Chibodia? Okay, maybe not. He doesn't live in Chibodia. So what they'll be saying to him is, look at, let's tell you the reality on the ground, the reality of my life. Okay? This economy is not about the elite. Because, see, we are a very small component of this society. So to make a small group happy at the expense or risk of the larger group is dangerous for democracy.
Is it possible to work on those very basic fundamentals without working on the macroeconomic indicators? Is it possible for us to have a healthy economy minus dealing with the macroeconomics?
Look, the first part of any economy, I'm not an economist, but here's my very little understanding of economics. The first part of any economy, Andrew, is how much it delivers in terms of food production. Okay? The first 50 years of the United States post-independence era, from 1776, the first 50 years, the U.S. economy was founded on agriculture. Okay? Now, before machines came, that was before the Industrial Revolution, agriculture was only producing food, was not only producing food, it was also creating employment, because it was extremely labor intensive. Okay, so it did two things. It produced food, it also created the employment. So, that's the situation we are in today. Okay, seriously, we are in that period of the United States. Even as we use computers today, iPhones, and whatever, in terms of economic development, we are actually way back into that. And that's the formula that the Chinese used. The Chinese decided, we have the population on our side, we don't have the technology yet. What do? We are going to do everything labor intensive. So the economy must first begin by producing food. It will reach a point, Andrew, where food production is in surplus. When you reach that stage, then the price of food commodities, products start going down. What we have today is that even the little food that is produced is actually getting wasted. Go to Soweto and see how much the small-scale farmers labor to grow tomatoes, to grow cabbages, to grow all sorts of vegetables. They bring these products to Soweto. The first thing that they encounter is these political party rogues. Okay? These political party rogues that do no work, but they want to thrive on the hard work of others. So they intimidate people there, and the government knows about this. They intimidate people there, so you give them your box of tomatoes, and they say, we are buying it from you at 150 kwacha. You leave it there. They themselves turn out to sell it at 400 kwacha. And you tell me, you put that farmer, even the fuel that he has used, and most of them, have to hire these counter trucks, to bring their products. Surely that kind of anarchy is something that the president the president and the government can deal with. I watched, an interview by the provincial chairman, my colleague, Obvious Mwaliteta. I think it was on the Sunday interview, and he was denying the fact that these rogues exist. And that they exist in the name of UPND. I'm surprised. And when he was put in the corner by Grevasio, he's no, let me go and check, There's nothing to check. Exactly what used to happen under PF is exactly what is happening under UPND. Okay? So you can't have, this economy thrive, when there are rogues in between, there are extortionists, in between, I used to have my truck, at let me give you a practical example, at the Buseko market there, okay? There is some chairman there. Every time you load, you must give him, something. And he comes from his house to just come and camp there and get free money. I withdrew my truck. It's not his truck. What the hell, is he doing for him to just be collecting money, from people? And this is what used to happen under PF. It's continuing to happen under UPND. That's not how you create employment for your party cadres or your members. So there are a lot of things, that have to be put in place. The other thing is that the government, for small-scale farmers to succeed, the government must put in some intervention. Let me explain this. You have these small-scale farmers who come to Soweto, and not only Soweto, maybe Chisoko market, in Kitwe. There must be another market, in Luansha, and their loss comes from this. When they bring their products, and the products are not able to sell by the end of the day, because they are perishables, they drop their price next to nothing. What the government should do in terms of intervening is put up cold rooms there. Put up cold rooms. They can allow Lusaka City Council to put up cold rooms there and allow these traders to store their products there at a minimal levy, and then they can realize the economic value or prices of their products. Is that very difficult to do? Surely not. Okay? But we spend so much time politicking and dealing with indices that do not translate into the reality on the ground. This economy, I argue myself, is not founded on copper, Andrew. That's not the bedrock of this economy. This economy is being supported by the informal sector. That's the foundation of this economy, not copper. Because after all, the money from copper doesn't even stay in Zambia. The money which is circulating in this country is the money from the informal sector, from these wretched marketeers that get up at 4 to go and get my order and bring, those products into town. They are the foundation of this economy. It is their money that is in circulation. It's not, the money is not from First Quantum. The money is not from Kalumbira Mine. The money in circulation is from these people.
We're going to take our first break. State Council Wynter Kabimba back. I would like to find out just how then we can ensure that these numbers are translated into the economic conditions of our people. We take our first break.
What would you like this festive season?
I would like everyone to be happy.
You know I can't make everyone happy. All I want to know is what would you want?
What I would like this festive season is...
Yes, ma'am?
DSTV. So, Zoe and Wupe can watch their favorite cartoons all day. And Dad might just go crazy over his football.
Man. And you and me can watch our local favorite shows.
And the way I know Grandpa, he loves his local comedy shows as well. Something for everyone.
DSTV is all you want this festive. Make your family happy by reconnecting.
Well, thank you so much for still staying with us. You are still watching the Zambian Vote. My guest is Economic Fund President, State Council Wynter Kabimba. Before the break, State Council Wynter Kabimba, we were talking about how you're of the considered view that the current administration is obsessed with macroeconomic indicators as opposed to what is happening, on the ground. And my question again was on, don't you think it's what we do at that level that spills over? And let me demonstrate how.
Yeah.
Isn't it that when the exchange rate is okay, then I can rent a shop at arcades at a much more better price? Isn't it that when the exchange rate is okay, our fertilizer that we import, the fuel that we import, is going to come into the country at a cheaper price, and that will translate into, me ultimately who has a car buying the fuel cheaper. You don't see how these positive macroeconomic indicators plays out in the entire, equation of the economy.
That's the ideal situation. What you are describing, demonstrating, is actually the ideal situation. That's not what happens in the reality. Okay, and I'll tell you how.
Even government is shocked because the Minister of Trade, Commerce and Industry, now was of the considered view that all this is happening, but like you're saying, in reality, we are not seeing these things change. Perhaps the government must put in price controls.
Well, they can't, because they are tied to this liberal economic policy. And liberal economic policy is about free market. Okay? And you are talking about the free market in this place between two unequal groups of people. Okay? You can talk about free market in the United States, because the major players there are equal in terms of capacity, in terms of capital, and everything. Let me put it this way. When the kwacha has gone down, okay, or has appreciated, to use that term, and you go to a shop where you bought the product a year ago, and you find, or 6 months ago, and you find the price is still the same. Ask the trader, why is this price still the same when the kwacha has appreciated? The answer will be, this is the old stock that we brought in when the kwacha was still at 28. Okay? That will be the answer. So we are trying to clear this stock, and then the next stock, what they are doing actually is speculating. They know the volatility of the kwacha. They know that the kwacha will not remain at 22 for a long time. It will start depreciating. Okay? So you go to rent premises today, and this is another thing that is interesting to discuss, Andrew. In the Netherlands, and I think most Scandinavian countries, okay, that run a free market, the government still determines how much rental you should pay to a private landlord or landlady per square meter. That is prescribed by government. Okay? So there is a law that says if you want to rent property, be it a house or a commercial property in area A, you can only pay a maximum of so much per square meter. If you want it in place in area B, you can only pay so much per square meter. These are capitalist countries, but the government still intervenes to make sure that those that don't have much don't sleep in the open. Okay? We don't have that here. So you find a guy, because of the pressure of accommodation, a guy who is leasing out a ramshackle is charging more than the guy in Helen County who has a property much better than that one. There's actually no basis for landlords and landladies here, increase rentals depending on their problems. They come and say to you, no, kai nomba rent na ichinja. Ninshi ata ninkwate chidiro. Okay? Or sometimes they want to come and get rentals from you in advance. 1 week before. Penin dalama. Ninshi kai umeshita la kumana, awe ninkwate chidiro, nomba naraya shani kuchidiro. You know, government has a duty to protect the weak. That's fundamentally the underlying principle of a government. It must protect the weak. Our situation does not, so when you talk about those fundamentals, the micro, you go down. Yes, that's why even the minister is surprised. I'm sure that's why even the president is surprised. And they're not wrong in expressing that surprise. But what is happening? We thought that we are doing the best, and but why are the people still complaining? They must get down, to defining and understanding what a third world economy is. And they must realize that they are running a third world economy, not an economy which is part of the European Union. And this will not be done by all these guys, that come and say they are cooperating with us and they want to help us. This must be done by us to understand that fundamentally, the government exists to protect the poor and the weak.
Let's talk about the Constitution. The period for public submissions on constitution changes has now ended. Last week on the 13th. Did you submit your concerns to the technical committee and some of the changes you'd like to see in the Constitution?
Yes, I did. I went there the day before yesterday. I think which was their last day. But in addition to the terms of reference, I also had my own issues.
What were your submissions?
I requested for the indulgence of the panel just to listen to some of the things which, in my view, and I'm not speaking for government and I'm not in government, if I were really to deal with the issues of constitutional amendments, Andrew, what I thought the priorities would be. Okay? One of the things that I submitted on is that since independence, and 1964, we have maintained the article in the Constitution that English shall remain the official language in this country. And I said to the technical committee, and yet when you look at the statistics, only about 2% of the people can speak and read English. And of that 2%, I'm sure less than 1% speak it and understand it very well. The rest of the 2% would be struggling. Now, my submission was that isn't it time that we got the 7 vernacular languages that we use on radio and add them onto English as official languages, so that people are able to conceptualize ideas in their mother tongue, and they would sound very intelligent, and also you will carry them along as part of the development agenda of the nation. Okay? The second thing that I submitted on was this issue of land. I said to the panel, we are creating an apartheid here in the country, silently and maybe unconsciously. I said the most obnoxious piece of legislation which is in existence today is the Lands Act of 1995. And I'm surprised that this thing is not part of the debate by any government, including the government I served, or in myself, or under Michael Sata. Andrew, our people, again the poor and the weak, are being displaced in this country from land. They are being pushed, to areas where the land is useless, the way the Boers did it, push them into the mountains, the way they did it in Zimbabwe. That's what is happening now. Look at Kaningalinga. Okay? Kalingalinga is almost disappearing as we knew it. Because all these foreigners, so-called investors are coming in. They go to a family and say, I want to buy this plot for 50,000 kwacha. And the poor head of the family, who has never seen 50,000 kwacha, in his life, thinks that that is a lot of money. And Kalingalinga today has become an extension of the commercial, area. It's happening to Chawama. It's happening in the villages. I told them, some of the chiefs and village headmen are collaborating with the foreigners to displace their own people. Okay? As I was driving here, I got a call from the village of somebody that wants to see me because the village head woman wants to grab, their field and sell it to an Asian. And I'm not being racial. Okay? And the village headman sees nothing wrong with that. The chief sees nothing wrong with that. That the poor villagers should be losing their fields to foreign elements, to the elite from town like me. And I say no. If I'm going to represent that person pro bono, I'll do it. So I submitted on land.
I'm surprised that you had gone to submit those submissions, because I think earlier you had indicated, even before this whole process began of the technical committee collecting submissions, when Bill 7 was proposed, you were one of the people that was strongly against the bill, and you had appealed to the conscience of the president to withdraw the bill and perhaps bring it after the 2026 elections. Where did you still proceed? I thought you would boycott, as a sign of disagreeing with the whole process.
No, I've never believed in boycotts, Andrew. If I'm seated in a room and there's a meeting going on, and there is something that I'm disagreeable with, and I decide to keep quiet and not voice out my thoughts about it, I'm not doing myself a favor. And I'm not doing other people that may be persuaded by my voice a favor. Okay? So, the Mushabati Technical Committee has been appointed. It has been established by the President. The record from there will remain ad infinitum. People will be doing research on it. In the future, people will try to find out what happened when this committee, sat. Who actually made the representations? What were their positions? Okay? So, as a history student, I'm not only doing this for today, I'm doing this for the future. I have a duty not only to this generation of my country, I have a duty to the future generations of my country that may either agree with my submissions as I put them, or may disagree, who may learn from my submissions and create a better society from what I said. That really is my conviction.
As we conclude, the biggest debate around these constitutional changes has been, especially from other stakeholders, that this is too close to an election. Let's abandon the process and do it after the election. Government, those that are in government and those from the ruling party have argued that, look, for every constitution that we've amended in our country, we've amended the constitution in an election year. And so this is not anything peculiar. And the argument then doesn't stand that we are amending, this constitution 10 months before the elections.
I hear those arguments. From the issue, Andrew, is not when and at what time this exercise is taking place. That is not the argument for me. The argument for me is against all the problems, and the headwinds in the way of the UPND, high cost of living, poor health medical care, and the lack of drugs, in hospitals, and against all these real issues that affect the day-to-day life of the people, against these issues is the amendment of the Constitution using these 13 articles. Should it be the priority, whether you are doing it now or you want to do it after elections? The answer is no, in my view. Okay? So, the question...
So we can't do them simultaneously? We're working on the Constitution and we're dealing with the economic challenges of our people?
Yes, if you can show the people, I'm sure if you went to Chibolia now, you and I went to Chibolia and said, look, the president has got the money to pay the technical committee for the next sittings across the country. But if he doesn't pay the technical committee, then the president will pay for the fertilizer which is coming into the country, very cheap because of the rain season for us to plant. What do you want? They will tell you, stop the technical committee, pay for the fertilizer.
Do you think the 30 days was enough for the committee to collect submissions?
You can't traverse this country in 30 days. You can't traverse this country, in 30 days. And again, this is the problem. If the government wants to do it in a proper way. What is a proper way? Make sure that you reach out to as many people as possible. Okay? I'll give you an example. The Indian Constitution, the Constituent Assembly in India started sitting in 1946, and the Constitution was only adopted in 1949. 3 years. Okay? The United States Constitution, the Philadelphia Convention was convened in 1987, and the states, the colonies that were to do the ratification only ratified that in 1789.
Was that an overhaul of the Constitution?
No, it was the first Constitution. I'm just telling you the process. Okay? The South Africans, their Constituent Assembly started meeting in June of 1994, and Mandela only signed the Constitution into law on the 10th of December 1996. Okay? So I'm giving you these 3 examples of countries that have produced some of the best constitutions in the world. So you can't do this in 30 days if you are serious. You can't do it if you want to bring everybody on board, unless you want to make it your document and your project only.
Probably, perhaps, maybe it's because we're not dealing with the entire Constitution. We're dealing with, very few clauses in the Constitution. Probably that's the reason for why we have this show.
Even if you just want to take the 13, the controversy around them must be resolved, firstly. Secondly, you must make the people understand. Okay?
The people don't understand?
They don't understand.
The Minister of Justice, Madam Princess Kasune, was having a press briefing, and she was so shocked at the overwhelming numbers that, according to her and according to government, that so far the technical committee is receiving. It says hundreds of thousands of people are coming to make submissions.
The problem is that when you are in power, you develop a different set of eyes and ears, from the organs you had before you got into power. Extremely unfortunate in my view. I don't know what politics does to people. I was in power myself. I was in PF. And some of the things that I used to hear my colleagues suggest, which PF had condemned MMD about, were shocking me. And I remember one day raising a question in a cabinet meeting. I said, why is this right today when it was wrong yesterday with MMD? Why are we debating it today as a right? Okay? Okay? So when I hear statements like that from the Minister of Justice, I get up. I was at the Constitutional Review by a technical committee, I don't think they got more than 10 people, for the period that they were there. If you want to call it overwhelming. And I can challenge the technical committee, the panels, wherever they are, each panel to give us the statistics of how many people submitted in a day. You'll be shocked. Okay? So you can't play public relations with people's lives. Okay? If the process is moving at a tortoise's pace, at a snail's pace, that's the more reason why I should say, no, hang on. Then we have not done enough work to sensitize the people about this. I was at the farm for 1 week, or after my father's funeral. I never heard anybody talk about the Constitution there. I was at the funeral where there were multitudes and multitudes of people, my father's funeral. I never heard any villager talk about the Constitution. So even if you took the technical committee to go and sit there, they'll come out with maybe 3 people that will just do chimpwen and say there are people sitting here from Lusaka. These are the realities on the ground. And all that we can do is advise our colleagues.
Why would government lie?
Oh, governments have lied before. It's not strange for governments to lie. Hitler, lied. Okay?
But why
governments have lied.
Why would this particular government lie on a very important process?
Because see, they don't want to disengage. They don't want to, they don't know how to save face. Okay? There is a proverb in my language that, sometimes it is honorable to just say, I'm guilty. At the Insaka, for you to own up and say, no, I was wrong. And they say, because even when you say that, you still go and spend the night in a house, just like those people that constituted the panel that was trying you. So just be magnanimous enough and say, sorry, I was wrong. You still go and spend the night in the house, like everybody else. So I argued in my podcast of yesterday that successive Zambian governments have adopted the case, the bend that we got from the British in 1964 when they handed to us the Constitution. Britain, which was an imperial power. So successive governments in power, including this one, continue to believe that those in power, they know it all, and they are the best judges to frame the Constitution and hand it over to the people. But use the preamble, we the people.
What would you think is from your standpoint, what would you think is a major intention why this government is technically bent on wanting, to ensure that this Constitution is amended before the elections? Do you sense some form of genuine, intentions into this whole process from your standpoint?
Andrew, I'll answer you very honestly. I have tried. I've gone to bed and woken up, in the middle of the night to try to answer that question, and I can't find the answer. I've asked myself the question, what does UPND want to achieve out of this? Without speculating, I don't have the facts, but I've just tried to be objective and say to myself, what is it that UPND wants to achieve out of it? I can't find that answer. I'll be lying to you and I'll be lying to the viewers. I hope one day I'll be able to figure out and say, this, I think, was why they were doing it.
From the terms of reference, you don't see anything urgent that must be dealt with before the elections?
There are things in the terms of reference like
by-elections, is it?
No, not even by
Article 52.
Not even by Article 52. Okay? I submitted, on Article 52. That was an oversight. It was inadvertent on the part of the ECL group to have couched, Article 52 in the manner in which it was couched. And I remember one of the panelists, asking me, but why are you supporting this? Don't you see somebody, just being mischievous? And I said, no. This is a party issue. Andrew, if I'm going to have a member of the Economic Front that is going to file nominations and then withdraw, to make the party lose that seat, in the hope if we were to win it, then he shouldn't have been the member of the party in the first place. So that moral, aspect of party membership cannot be the problem of the Constitution. It is the problem of political parties. Okay? So the sooner political parties became strict enough in their admissions of people to membership, the better. But the law was never established to regulate moral issues. That when you get married to your wife, can you sign here that you will never get annoyed anyone a day? That's not the problem of the law. The law can't legislate that no husband, shall shout at the wife. Because we know that some husbands have, bad temperament. That cannot be the obligation of the law. That's what we are trying to do. So I answered. I said, this was wrong, and I think it must be amended.
Economic Front President, State Council Wynter Kabimba, thank you so much for making the time to appear on the Zambian Vote this morning.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks, dear viewers and listeners.
Well, there you have it. My guest has been the Economic Front President, State Council Wynter Kabimba. We're looking at the extended voter registration by the Commission, but also we're looking at the close of the Technical Committee in collecting submissions to the